Hi, comrades. Welcome to this first session of January 2025 Online Communist Forum. Jack Conrad will give the political report. This is organized by CPGB and I've forgotten the name.
Labour Party,
Marxist, Labour Party Marxist. My apologies. Go ahead, John.
Okay, well, welcome to 2025. We'll have the weekly worker out in a few days. Meanwhile, I'm just sort of commenting on very few subjects. I'm going to avoid the Middle East. It's not because things aren't happening there, but we've got an article following a speech by Moshe in the paper, so that's to come. And we've also got an article by Yasmin Mather on the Middle Eastern question as well. But I'm going to start on 2024, looking back, and various reports that are either due or have already come out saying that 2024 was the hottest year on record. Now, of course, what that means is in historic times. So we're talking about, roughly speaking, depending on what country, you're talking about something like 1850. We're not talking about prehistoric times. We all know about the Jurassic and the Solonian and all the rest of it. It was a lot hotter then. But the point is, the planet since about 1850 has been slowly warming up. And since about 1970, the pace of change in terms of warming has increased markedly. And that is something that most scientists expect to continue, whatever various countries do. So even if they shut down the entire motor car industry, even if they went over to 100% renewables, tomorrow global warming would continue. Why? Because we're talking about something like an oil tanker. We're talking about heat continuing to generate momentum in terms of global warming. So in terms of the melting of the ice caps, in terms of melting glaciers, all of this is something that will continue throughout the 21st century. And the question is not, will the Earth stop warming up, but it's how much the warming up can be limited. Now, at the moment, there is absolutely no chance whatsoever of meeting the Paris Accords 2017, limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial times. Indeed, we're waiting for a report to be coming out in a few days that seems like it's going to announce that actually 2024 was the year that on average we saw a 1.5 degree centigrade increase. So 2024, we're already there. So keeping it below that is now an irrelevance. It's not going to happen. The question is this year a freak? Well, in part, we're told by climate scientists because of the El Nino effect that's served to add to global warming. But the general expectation is that warming will continue, and really it's about not 1.5 anymore. It's about at the lowest conceivable increase above about 1850 is 1.9 degrees centigrade. But in terms of estimates, that can go up to something like 3.8 degrees centigrade by the end of the 21st century. Of course, we don't know because it's about what human beings do. It's about what governments do. It's about what sort of society we have. So yes, things could be limited to 1.9, or if they're not, then we're talking about going towards 4 degrees. And of course, what happens with that is not only do the polar ice caps continue to melt, what we see is sea levels rise, that's going to happen, but sea levels will rise. That actually adds to the heating effect. And what we're talking about is the inundation of a whole series of cities, Jakarta, Alexandria, Shanghai, in the Netherlands, Amsterdam. One can just carry on down the list. The United States, Houston, St. Louis. The list is long and frightening. And of course, what that goes hand in hand with is that traditional agricultural patterns get completely disrupted. Now, I'm not saying this as a definite, but for example, you could see the disruption of the wheat belt in North America, which is the sort of breadbasket of much of the world. Paradoxically, you could see a country like Britain becoming more like Labrador, which means more foul weather, at least from our point of view, more wet, more windy, more dank sort of weather. So global warming can have a paradoxical effect. But the real question is the disruption in terms of extreme weather, existing not only agricultural patterns, but also habitation patterns. And the threat is there, not of the end of the world. The world has gone through many dramatic temperature shifts, but the threat is to existing civilization. That is a real possibility in terms of mass people movement, in terms of wars, in terms of societal collapses. Now, I've written, for what it's worth, on the basis that surely something at some time must be done about the possibility of the capitalist state looking at its own interests in terms of survival and doing something, taking draconian measures to limit CO2 and methane pollution, limit air travel, limit motor cars. But at the moment, it has to be said that other than greenwashing, we've seen absolutely nothing. So yes, we've seen one COP after the other, plenty of fine resolutions, but very little in the way of action. So even when states vote to limit, the output of CO2, there's a big gap between what they say and what actually happens on the ground. And that's true also with supplying finance to the so-called underdeveloped world, the semi-colonial world, the oppressed world. An awful lot of that remains on paper or takes the form of crippling loans or advances in terms of technology with strings that benefit the giving country. And of course, you couldn't make things worse than the election of Donald Trump for a second term. I mean, just look at the sort of administration that he's proposing. If you look at the appointees that he's talking about, to put it mildly, it includes not a few climate skeptics, that's the polite word for it, not least Donald Trump himself. So it doesn't surprise me at the moment. Maybe this is my sort of subjective assessment. I don't know. I'd be interested to hear what comrades think. But my sort of feeling about the climate movement is that it's dramatically declined. It's not that people aren't concerned with the climate. They know what's wrong. They know what needs to be done. But in terms of demonstrations, in terms of pickets, but also in terms of high profile stunts, blocking motorways, blowing up pipelines, none of this has worked. Indeed, all we need to do is look at Britain and the draconian measures that have been taken against climate protesters in terms of legislation, but also prison sentences. That's had how should I put it, a dampening effect on militancy. And certainly what we're saying is that we need to go from it's a huge ask, I know, but we need to go from the politics of protest, because we're simply not going to convince the Donald Trumps of the world, the Keir Starmers, the Kemi Basingstocks, the Macrons, the Le Pens. We're not going to convince those people. And we need on the left to replace the politics of protest with the politics of coming to power. We need the politics of transitioning beyond capitalism. Socialism is the only rational answer. So although I've looked at the possibility of the bourgeois state taking some lead, and my fear is if it did, which is, as I say, no sign of it at the moment, it could conceivably get green backing from the official Green Party, from organizations like XR, from Just Say No to Oil. I can imagine, maybe I'm besmirching them, I can imagine that sort of step being greeted with enthusiasm, but at the moment, we see absolutely nothing. So 2024 looks like it will be the hottest year on record. Maybe 2025 won't be, but it's worth noting that not only was 2024 the hottest on record, the last 10 years have consistently been the hottest on record. So we would expect 2025, 2030, 2040 to follow that pattern. And as I said, that will continue whatever we do, even if we have socialism tomorrow, which doesn't look likely, unfortunately, that will follow. Okay, we also have an article from our excellent writer, James DeMarte, commissioned on Elon Musk. What the hell is he doing? I don't know. If you asked me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, Elon Musk, I would have said, well, look, there he is with electric cars. He's one of these sort of, like, I know he's born in South Africa, but one of these, Silicon Valley tech guys. I would expect that he would have sort of libertarian views, slightly lefty. Obviously, there's a possibility that I'd be wrong. Or there's the possibility that he's changed. Either way, what we see now with Elon Musk is him promoting the politics of the far right. And that didn't just mean bankrolling the Donald Trump campaign with, huge donations and, making X available for Donald Trump. He's also now intervening in the politics of other countries. So in Britain, we've had him calling for an inquiry into the grooming gangs, or what the right is insisting at the moment in calling rape gangs. He's called for the jailing of Jess Phillips for not going with that demand. We've seen the Tories jump on the bandwagon. We've seen Reform jump on the bandwagon. And of course, we've seen Nigel Farage pictured alongside Elon Musk in front of that picture of Trump. Is he posing in cricket gear? It looks like it. Either way, we've had Elon Musk promising to bankroll reform with millions and millions of pounds in terms of donations. And that could be legal, one presumes, if Elon Musk was to take up British citizenship. That's my understanding of it. What's his big, long game? I haven't got a clue. I'd be interested to read the article from Paul Damarte, but we've seen him not only intervene in the United States and then Britain with his polemics against Keir Starmer and the Labour government. We've also seen him intervene in Germany, backing Alternative for Germany, much to the displeasure of Olaf Scholz. Remember, this is now a general election year in Germany, and AfD is running second to the Christian Democrat Bavarian Social Union coalition, with the Social Democrats running third. Who knows what the result will be? I don't know whether Elon Musk makes you popular or unpopular. My fear is that the right is on the march, with very few exceptions in most of the countries of the world. Which leads me straight to Austria, where we have the collapse of coalition talks between three parties, and that's the Social Democrats, the Conservatives, I think they no doubt call themselves the People's Party, and a party that's new to me, the Neos. I presume that means new party. Of course, the Social Democrats and the Conservatives, they're the traditional parties of post-World War II Austria. The Social Democrats, of course, go back to the Second International, Austrian social democracy throughout the 20s into the 30s was to the left of the Socialist International. And it has to be said that the Social Democrats in Austria had the honor of actually refusing to give in to the fascists in Austria, where the official Communist Party in Germany didn't lift a finger in terms of putting up armed resistance. The Social Democrats did that. They went down, but they did fight. So that does say something about their historic background. But what's interesting, and the reason why I raise this collapse in coalition talks, is really to at least sound a warning alarm about Germany, the most important country in Europe, a country that lies at the core of the EU, i.e. Germany. We've already mentioned general election year 2025, because what's going on in Austria could easily happen in Germany. Of course, it's a question of politics, it's a question of arithmetic. Nevertheless, what's happened in Austria is that there is a possibility of the Christian Democrats, or I should say conservatives, I don't want to be on the safer side, the conservatives and the Social Democrats getting together, but politically it ain't going to happen. And what we've had is the new party, the Neos, pull out of the coalition talks, and that has opened the door to the possibility of a coalition deal between the Conservative Party and the Freedom Party, which in broad terms is the equivalent, the Austrian equivalent of the AfD. This is a party that historically the establishment parties have said, we have a firewall that keeps them out of government. We're not going to touch these people. These people are beyond the pale. They have links, with the SS. They have links with former Nazis in terms of their history. This is not a party we can do a deal with. In Austria, there is that possibility. Whether it happens or not, that's a different question. And I'm simply saying this because I wouldn't automatically rule out that possibility in Germany. And of course, if it did happen, then the dreams of the liberals of ever closer unity in terms of the EU project, a liberal united Europe, all of that goes. Nonetheless, in Germany, because of its powerful economy, there is still the need for some sort of economic space in Central Europe that allows it to employ labor and gives it a market for its goods. And therefore, that poses objectively in Germany the necessity either of a democratic space such as the EU, or failing that, something else. And of course, we've seen what the something else is since the time of Bismarck, blood and iron. So 1870, 1914, 1939. That isn't to say, of course, that the AfD or the Freedom Party should be thought of as the equivalent of the Nazi party. They are parties of the far right. They are parties of extreme chauvinist nationalism. Either way, we should take note of what's going on in Austria, because it could be easily repeated. Not that it's happened yet in Austria, but it could easily be repeated in Germany. And of course, we see the continued rise in France of national rally. Now, unusually, I'm going to be finishing early this week, and I thought I would finish by talking about 2024. I thought I'd finish by talking about Christmas. I'm not going to regale you with what I did at Christmas, my love of Christmas pudding, what presents I got, and all the rest of it, but simply to look at the left and how it views culture, the culture of the society that it lives amongst and seeks to lead. And I thought what I would do, just check, just in case I got it wrong. Late last year, as part of my sort of duties, I regularly read Socialist Worker. I regularly read The Socialist, the paper of SPEW, Socialist Party in England and Wales. And what I noted last year, and I thought, is their last edition, Socialist Worker? It's a very weird last edition, I thought to myself. But yeah, it was their last edition. And what I was struck by is the fact that, other than saying that the next Socialist Worker will be coming out in early January 2025, what struck me was what was in Socialist Worker, but what wasn't in Socialist Worker. And I think Freud talked about it, didn't he, as something along the lines of a significant silence. And what struck me is the significant silence that Socialist Worker had towards Christmas. And I just thought to myself, this is really weird, because Socialist Worker is having a holiday because of Christmas. I would guess that members of the SWP, just like me, got together with family, had Christmas dinner, drank too much, perhaps, had too much Christmas pudding or whatever they happen to like. Maybe some of them might have gone to church. I don't know. But quite frankly, if you went to a supermarket, you couldn't escape Christmas songs. I can remember actually late in Christmas, I had to go to the bank. I went to the bank with an old comrade of mine. We had to sort out some financial questions for the party. Ushered into a back room in the bank, and they had Christmas songs playing. And I spoke to the young woman who was dealing with us. Doesn't that drive you up the wall? You have this pipe music, the same song repeated. I mean, it did go on a loop. She said, yeah, she couldn't say it too loudly. But I mean, quite frankly, you switch on the television, you switch on the radio, you cannot escape Christmas in a country like Britain. So I find it remarkable that Socialist Worker, tried to escape Christmas. Now, does it want to escape Christmas because of its Christian connotations? No, I actually think that Socialist Worker, in terms of their editorial team, in terms of their central committee, they live in a strange world. And again, I just wanted to illustrate it, not just by their studied refusal to deal with Christmas, like, for example, in the way that we did in the Weekly Worker. Now, we could have run This Is What's on TV. We could have run, as we did last year, I think, a very good article that was introduced by Ben Lewis, written years and years ago, of course, by Bernstein, Edward Bernstein, the founder of revisionism in Germany, of his time in the Engels household with the celebration of Christmas, and Engels stirring the Christmas pudding and sending treats to the Marx family and all the rest of it. This year we had again the wonderful Paul DeMarte on Charles Dickens and Christmas Carol. I thought that was a great article. We had Jack Conrad on spending over Christmas, the Jesus of, the Palestine of the Roman Empire. We had, the game with Father Christmas and the Elvish Revolt, all, light-hearted, amusing, but also a serious side. And that is, we ought to take this culture that we live in seriously. We've got something serious to say. We can have a joke, but we're also wanting to engage in a thoughtful way with the culture that we lived in. After all, there are lessons there to be learned from the Christians. The chances of Jesus being born on Christmas Day are pretty remote, 365 to 1. And we don't even know what year he was born in, so the odds are even greater than that. But the Christians took over, didn't they, an existing celebration. Maybe Roman Saturnalia. Anywhere in the north, you have these, longest day festivals. I believe that's the case. Also, in southern countries like Iran, we had an article not so long ago by Yasmin Mather talking about Zoroastrianism and their fire and is it water? Either way, this sort of Manchian universe. But the point I'm making is the left ought to have something to say about this. I turned with no great expectations to the socialist, and I went, I actually recognize Christmas, because what they had is their banner head. It wasn't particularly clear, but it had snowflakes on it this year. So I went, maybe they recognize Christmas. And indeed they did. They had a Christmas quiz with Karl Marx image with, Father Christmas type hat, a snowman. And I went, okay. At least they're engaging where their readers are. And this was the big quiz of 2024. And I read the questions and my heart dropped. And I'll just illustrate the problem with it and they're all the same. But I'll just illustrate. They had 30 questions with the answers upside down at the bottom of the page. Question 1. In the first issue of the year, what event did we correctly predict would happen in 2024? My heart dropped. I blew up the answer, craned my head, and it was a general election. And all the rest of them, what pamphlet did the CWI issue? What a sad life the comrades lead. There they are sitting around the Christmas table, and they're all answering questions about what event did the socialist correctly predict in the first issue of 2024? What pamphlet did the CWI issue? Oh, God help us. And just to back up the point, I thought it was worthwhile quoting not our last issue of the year, which of course had Father Christmas with the Elvish slogan at the bottom of the article, down with the tyrant Father Christmas, that's in Elvish, if you hadn't worked it out. If you haven't worked it out, you haven't read the article. But the issue before that, we actually led with football. And I know that we have some comrades who looked at that picture, headline, Saudi Arabia shapes football in its own image, and basically said, what on earth is a left-wing paper doing featuring football, not just in the pages of the paper, but on the front page of the paper? Well, again, I sort of shake my head in despair. I mean, all you need to do is meet other comrades on the left on a Saturday, and half of them, and we're not just talking about men, half of them are looking at their phones and seeing what their team is doing half time. That's also what they talk about when they go to work, as well as strikes, as well as demonstrations. This is something that's important in terms of global culture. It's something that involves millions in terms of participation and billions in terms of watching and being involved in an emotional way. And the left ought to have something to say on football. It needs something to be saying about culture in general. It needs to be saying something about music, theatre. It needs to be saying something about human life, not just strikes and demonstrations and sit-ins. Sit-ins, strikes, and demonstrations are important. So are elections. But there are other things that are also important. And if I was going to criticize the Weekly Worker for anything, and I don't want to get too, let's beat ourselves up, it's that we don't cover enough of such how should I put it, non-overtly political questions. We don't cover enough when it comes to science, when it comes to the arts, when it comes to the sports. We ought to be striving to have a rounded coverage and develop the ideas of the left about the society that we live in, because if we don't understand the society that we live in, we really haven't got much of a hope of changing the society that we live in. So I'm going to finish there, Yasmin. So very early this week.